Hello guys, and after this video you're going to know how to get 20 out of 20 on language paper 1 question 4. I recommend watching this whole thing because this is the question that most students get stuck on. I'm going to go through some top tips, some mistakes to avoid, because that is the easiest way to get top grades in English language. So firstly, what is the question? It will say something like, focus this part of your answer on the second half of the source. A student said the part of the text is to what extent do you agree? So what it is, it will give you a statement, and it will give you a statement that's largely true, and you'll be asked to agree or disagree with it. Now, I would always recommend it's always set up really for you to agree with it. So I would definitely agree with the statement mostly, but you can partly disagree with it. So it's 20 marks. So timing is around 20 to 25 minutes, but around 30 minutes with extra timing. So some techniques that we can use in this question. Now, in this question, we can use both language and structure techniques. Question 2 is just language. Question 3 is just structure. This we can use language and structure, so you can pick out both. But some techniques I'd actually recommend you using among your language and structure techniques are things like tentative language. Now, tentative language, what it actually is just saying what it might or could suggest. So saying like rather than you'll say it definitely shows this, saying like, oh, it could suggest this, it might suggest this. That is tentative language. And that actually allows the examiner to see that you're actually considering alternative interpretations, which will get you more marks. So as an example, it might say, this may suggest, so you see that's my tentative language. I'm not saying it does suggest it. It's small, but it's important. This may suggest that the character is beginning to doubt herself, though some readers might interpret it as frustration rather than fear. So we can see here, I've said this may, and then I said, though some readers, I'm layering different interpretations in, and that is what you would definitely be doing in question 4 and as you're responding to the statement. Now, the second technique we want to look at is evaluative language. Now, evaluative language means you're evaluating how far you agree on something. So it's like, how well did the writer show the part of the statement you're actually arguing? Were they successful? Was it clear? Like, how well did they do it? If the statement is set up in a way saying, like Zoe loves the mountains, how clear was that to you as a reader? Did the writer do a good job at that? And then you want to argue using evaluative language how far they did it. Because they might have done it, let's say, for example, a 6 out of 10. So you want to use in words to describe that, they did most of it, but it could have been a bit better. And that's how we're evaluating the statement. So like I said earlier, we want to make sure we're mostly agreeing with it. You can partly disagree. And this kind of comes into your evaluation of how well did they really do the thing the statement is saying. So an example, compared to the calm early description of the field, the sudden shift to the ground tremble beneath her successfully shows how quickly the safety has dissolved. So you see, I've kind of stated something. So I've talked about this description, this shift from the different settings, and then I've linked it to how it successfully demonstrates part of the statement. So it's almost like you want to give your evidence, give your technique and analysis, and then you'll link it back to how successful it is. And a really important thing to do for this question, guys, is making sure you've got a good structure that allows you to be evaluative. For example, if we go on to question 4 on the Light Up Hub, this is done for every single one of the questions, and question 4 is included. What you get is you get a full structure with sentence starters, grade 9 model example, the mark scheme broken down, literally everything. And the important thing with these structures is you will make sure it ticks off absolutely everything in the mark scheme. And that's why getting just structures from like ChatGPT won't do it, because ChatGPT doesn't know year on year the mistakes that students make and can create you a structure. For example, I've been doing this for over 5 years. I know, and I've seen what students actually do. ChatGPT is not going to be able to give you that. Now, I'm going to break down 3 top mistakes that students do and how you can avoid it in the exam. And it's easy. If you can think through mistakes, then you can think about, okay, how can I avoid doing that? So the first one is making vague or general evaluations without explaining the effect. So what this kind of means is a low-level student might say, like, the writer makes it sound interesting. We're kind of evaluating, saying, they do something in the statement. They might say, make something sound interesting or intriguing, but it doesn't really give us much detail. So why this is wrong is it lacks specificity. So it's not specific. It doesn't explain how or why the writer is engaging or effective. It simply gives an opinion with no supporting evidence. So how to fix it? We want to find techniques with a precise effect and explore why it influences the reader or shapes meaning. So for example, a high-level example how they change it is the writer uses use of the simile like a puppet pulled by visible strings, suggests the character feels powerless. That's what I'm saying the effect is, because I'm comparing the simile to what it shows about the character, which draws the reader into his sense of being manipulated or controlled. And that is me explaining why it influences the reader. So the important thing is we want to make sure we're talking about the effects of techniques and we're going to talk about why. And as I always bang on about, guys, you want to pre-learn in the exam general effects techniques, because we can't pre-learn analysis in the same way we could for lit, but you can pre-learn effects of techniques to make sure you're actually exploring them. For example, let's go on to structured technique sheet for this, because structured techniques so many students actually struggle with. So let's look at asyndetic listing. So what this actually is just items listed without the use of conjunction, including using punctuation. So basically, no and, it's just commas. So what we can see is it increases the pace of a text. So if I was going to know, I could pre-learn a few structured techniques, and then or language techniques as well, and I know the effect. If I see asyndetic listing, then I know it increases the pace of the text, and then all I've got to do is link that to the reader. Then it's an easy way that you don't got to think about, okay, what have I got to say about this? Just learn the effects of techniques, and then just connect that to the meaning. And then let's go on to, for example, we'll do the same for language. If we go on to language technique sheet here, if we look at alliteration, for example, alliteration, we know that it's the same word or letter at the beginning of a sentence. Alliteration draws attention to certain phrases or sentences. It not only draws the eye of the reader to the page, but the phrase has more emphasis. So then whatever I'd be analysing in my language exam, I know that alliteration emphasises something. That is the effect. So I just say, the alliteration emphasises that the girl is sad, then that helps me understand how to do my analysis. So just go through these sheets and just revise, let's say like 5, 6 language techniques and structure techniques with their effects, and that will help you so much with analysing. And then mistake number 2 is using contextual knowledge or assumptions that don't come from the extract. So what we've actually seen, and this came up in the examiner's reports, is that students will kind of use their own contextual knowledge, obviously from literature texts and things, to try and make inferences and assumptions about the text. But because it's a language exam, you are not expected to know anything about context. So don't really link anything to context, just keep it very specific on the text. For example, a low-level example would be, this reflects how women were treated in Victorian times. Lovely if we were doing literature, there's no marks awarded, it actually just takes away from what you're saying. So why this is wrong is students are not assessed for context in language paper 1. Bringing in historical or modern context adds nothing to the mark scheme, and it just wastes time. So how you want to fix it is you want to focus solely on the language and structure of the text, no external knowledge. So a high-level example would be, the character's lack of speech in this part, she said nothing, simply nodded, may suggest passivity or emotional withdrawal, which contrasts with her earlier assertiveness. So you can see there, I'm literally referencing what I have seen, and what I've done, which is a high level thing to do, is I've compared it to another part of the text. It's within the text, it's not within my own knowledge of the context at the time, so keep it very specific on the text you are talking about. And then the third mistake is writing with overconfidence or making sweeping fixed claims. So again, this is the first time you've read this, and you're not meant to or expected to really understand every small nuance, really understand the writer's intentions. So the examiner knows that. So don't try to be overly confident with it. So a low-level example would say, like, the writer definitely shows the character as evil. And why this is wrong is overly assertive language, and it doesn't actually reflect the complex or interpretive nature of the task. It closes down analysis rather than exploring possibilities. And with analysis, I know it sounds contradictory, but we always want to be exploring possibilities. What this could show one thing, but it could also show another. Give me multiple different ideas, different people's perspectives of how they would interpret it, because you don't definitely know, so don't try to be assertive. Actually include multiple interpretations, because that is what the examiner wants from you. So you want to use tentative language, as I said earlier in my little techniques, like perhaps, might or could, to show awareness of multiple interpretations. And this is such an easy way to be, inclusive of different interpretations and not being definite, is just using tentative language. So for example, a high-level example would be, the repeated reference to her cold smile could imply cruelty, but it might also suggest emotional detachment or a coping mechanism in a threatening environment. So you can just see there, I've said it could show, but it also might show this. So I'm layering in interpretations, which will get you more marks. So if you did like this, guys, please make sure to send it to a friend, help them out before the language exam, and do check out everything on the Letter Hub if you did want some more insight with structures, sentence starters, model examples, how to write up creative writing. It's all done on there for you.